Today we have the pleasure of having Mick Ebeling talk to us. He was raised in a family of entrepreneurs and philanthropists, and he's the founder of the Not Impossible Foundation, a nonprofit organization that develops creative solutions to real-world problems, as well as the Ebeling Group, an international production company and creative think tank representing some of the world's leading design and directing collectives. He was recently honored as one of the top 50 most creative people of 2014 and received the 2014 Muhammad Ali Humanitarian of the Year Award. He actually lives right here in Los Angeles with his wife Caskey and 3 children. Let's give a warm welcome to Mick.
Nice to be here, you guys. Nice to meet you all. How many people actually live in Venice? All right, good. It was good to see you guys come over in the neighborhood. I've been here since 95, 93, 94, when a lot of people wouldn't set their feet upon this area over here. So how many of you guys know anything about Not Impossible? Hopefully, awesome. I love that. Brand spanking new audience. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about Not Impossible, but I'm going to do it kind of through the story of why the heck I'm even up standing in front of you guys today. And it really comes down to everybody has a story. You know, everybody here is sitting here for a reason. Everybody is in their job for a reason. Everybody is where they live for a reason, who's married, who they married, or dating who they're dating for a reason. But it all kind of comes back to, and this is my belief at least, this kind of the sliding doors thing where you just make certain decisions in your life and all of a sudden that leads to something and leads to something. And the reason I'm here today is because of this guy. This guy's name is Tempt. And Tempt in the 80s and 90s was one of the foremost graffiti artists. And he came home from a run one day and said, "Dad, my legs are tingling." And that was the onset of something called ALS, which now a lot more people are aware of thanks to the Ice Bucket Challenge, which was a fantastic thing. But ALS is this horrific disease that basically, you can describe it in many different ways, but it's kind of like the blob and it moves up your body and renders you completely paralyzed. So one of the most horrific things about it, though, is that you retain your sense of a feeling as opposed to breaking your neck where you can't feel anything. You can actually feel like if your hand is cramped or hot or cold if you have ALS. So it's a really, really gnarly disease. So my production company decided one year, hey, instead of giving our clients a bottle of wine or some fruit basket or muffin plate or something that they would like forget about the second they got it, let's make a donation on their behalf. So we chose the HelpOne Foundation. And we chose them just because of who he was and what he represented, and we had just recently discovered kind of what this Tempt guy was all about. So we went and met with his father and brother, and we sat across the table from him and said, "Listen, I want to give you this money. What are you going to use the money for?" And his brother said, "I just want to talk to my brother again. So I want to get him a device that helps me talk to him." And I said, "What do you mean?" Because I thought, at that time, I'd never been exposed to anybody who had any kind of paralysis, right? Everybody is only aware of the things that they're aware of, kind of an obvious statement. But if you have someone in your family with cancer, or you have someone in your family who's in a wheelchair, you kind of understand the plights and the situations around those particular people. I had never been around anybody who was paralyzed and who was unable to talk. So my assumption was, and let me ask people in the room, how many people here are aware of or been exposed to or had family members of people who had trapped-in syndrome, who were not able to talk in any way? Okay, yourself, all right. So how many people here think that just one of those Stephen Hawking machines was just readily available for people? Right, me, I thought that was just the way that it worked. No, and you probably know that as well, not the case. I said, well, why doesn't he have a Stephen Hawking machine? Why doesn't he have one of those machines that Christopher Reeves or Stephen Hawking or these other people? And he said, that's if you have insurance or you have money, and we have neither. And I said, well, then how do you talk? And he said, we talk through a letterboard. We have a piece of paper, and we run our hand along it. And when Tempt gets to a letter, he blinks, and we write that down. And then we start again. So to say I'm cold or my hand is cramped or my neck is kinked or something like that is this horrifically long process to actually communicate. And at that time when I was exposed to this, I was flabbergasted. it was 1995, and everybody who works for this company is very familiar with Moore's Law. Everybody is very familiar with how fast technology works and evolves. And that classic commercial where the person like puts in a 3D television on their wall, and they go outside, and then the bus goes by that says new 4D television. You know, that's kind of classic. That's the way technology works. So I was flabbergasted that this guy wasn't communicating. He had no way to communicate except for this piece of paper. So I have a process, and that process is that you commit, and then you figure out how the hell you're going to pull it off, right? And knowing that there were people who had these machines, and knowing, because my background was in technology, but from the standpoint of 3D and animation and design and things like that, I knew enough about programming to make myself dangerous. But I said, listen, here's what we're going to do. One, we're going to get Tempt a machine so he can talk again. And two, the next time there's a fundraiser, which is how I became aware of Tempt, next time there's a fundraiser and there's art on the wall, it's going to be his art on the wall. He's going to be the one drawing again, not someone else drawing again. And they went, really? I said, really? I said, really? Yes, really. We high-fived and we hugged. And then I was like, oh my God, what did I just commit to, right? I had no idea how I was going to pull that off. So what I like to do, and this is the way that I live my life, is I love to surround myself with people who make me feel stupid, right? If you live your life like that, you're the guy at the dinner table, guy or girl at the dinner table who's winning, because everyone else is smarter than you. So at the end of the night, when the check comes, you've learned more than everybody else. So I love to invite brilliant people and just have conversations with them and dialogue. So that's what I did. I invited all these crazy hackers and programmers to my house, and we had a couple theories, and we just started to explore them. And the theory was, well, wait a second, what if we started to, like, we know we can get them a device. We know we can go and we can break down the insurance company, you know, kind of walls and get him a Stephen Hawking machine. And we did that. That was something that just, I mean, I'm a producer, so I don't know how to take no for an answer. We just kind of kept going and going and going until finally they said, Uncle. And we got him a device that allowed him to talk again. But the second part of getting him to draw again was different. So we said, well, what if we use the eye as a way to kind of, that's the tip of the pencil or the paintbrush, if you will. And what if we mapped the surface of the eye and kind of flattened that out so that he could move, and that is how he actually did his keystrokes or his paintbrush strokes or his, in this case, his spray paint. And so we came up with a theory of this. It's called the eye writer. And the eye writer, because of my heritage of where I live right here in Venice Beach, is made from materials that you find in Venice Beach. $8 cheap sunglasses from the Venice Beach Boardwalk. Coat hangers from my local dry cleaner. And then we ordered a web camera. And we hacked them all together. And at the end, this is kind of what happened.
Tempt is the ultimate graffiti artist.
He's put Los Angeles on the map.
He's always been next level.
He probably is the most versatile artist.
Tempt is an innovator.
People respect him. They know who he is. He's an OG.
He's such a force.
Nobody compares with his style. He's one of the top 5 in the world. Him being laid up, I don't think about that.
When you get diagnosed with ALS, it's a traumatizing experience because you're told you have only so long to live and you will spend your time completely trapped inside a body that doesn't move anymore.
I hate seeing him like that.
There's so many times where he could have just slipped away, but he's sticking it in there.
It's all about that one phone call that I almost did not pick up. Mick Ebeling was on the other end.
I had to be involved with Tempt and just helping him. I had no idea how I was going to come through on what I committed to.
Our writing culture was born of making something from nothing. I laid in bed, exploding with ideas that branched out from that initial concept. That's when I knew I wasn't done yet.
So at the end, we had all of these guys at our house, and we hacked and we programmed for about 2.5 weeks and ate a lot of pasta and spaghetti and beer, and came up with this. This is the eye writer. And it is as beautiful as it looks right there. It's zip ties and duct tape and coat hangers and cheap sunglasses. But at the end of 2 weeks, Temp drew again for the first time. And it was this amazing experience, and we're all down in the parking lot outside of his hospital. We kind of kicked his bed around so he could see out. We set up a projector. It was awesome because we broke into a car lot next door and then projected it on the side of a building. And he drew again, and he drew, and everybody high-fived, and we had some beers, and it was just this awesome experience. And then we went home, because that was it. There was no kind of bigger picture, grander plan. It was more like we knew that we could have Temp draw, so we did it. We did it because we could, and we wanted to help this one person. And then we kind of, quote, woke up the next day. And it was Time Magazine's Top 50 Inventions of 2010. And GIZMODO called it 8 Incredible Health Inventions That Transform Lives. And it's now a part of permanent collection at the MoMA. And we were like, what the heck just happened? We just did something essentially because we could, because we wanted to. And then it just took off like wildfire. And we started to think, well, wow, is this something that we should replicate? Is this something that we should do again? And what did we do that we can replicate it? And so in the process of, I'm thinking about this, and is this something I want to continue, we got an email from Temp. And Temp's email said this: "That was the first time I'd drawn anything for 7 years. I feel like I'd been held underwater, and someone finally reached down and pulled my head up so I could take a breath." And we got that, and I remember actually getting that email saying, all right, well, I don't know what we did or how we did it, but we got to figure out how to do it again. And we got to figure out how to keep doing this over and over again. And that was the launch of this concept for me of non-impossible. Non-impossible was the culmination of me looking at things that I knew Stephen Hawking had this device, and I knew that it existed, but why didn't it exist for him? And I knew that there was these things out there, so how could we take something that's impossible for one person and make it non-impossible? And what would happen if there was other things out there like that? And because of my infatuation with technology, I said, well, wait a second, what if we take technology, we make it not just technology for technology's sake, but technology for the sake of humanity? What happens if we churn this into something that we use technology and we hack and crack and make and reprogram and bust open things and actually turn it into something that accomplishes a fundamental social good? Then what could happen? And so in this obsession with technology, I started to obsess about this concept of impossible and started to look at, well, what is impossible? Well, the reality is you can't name anything that was not impossible at one time. Nothing. Go for the obvious. Look around this room, from projectors and computers and cell phones and kind of the obvious stuff, right? Now let's go back, I don't know, a couple thousand years. How about clothes? Just the concept of clothes or woven clothes. Depending on your religious beliefs, go back even further. How about walking upright? Right? So everything, truly everything, and everybody in this room knows this. How many things did you guys launch this month that were impossible last month? How about this week? How about today? Right? You guys do this. You guys are almost immune to it at this point. And we, I think, as a society are immune to it, especially in the technology space. Well, then, if that's the case, then impossible really isn't a question of if, it's a question of when. So in this kind of obsession, I started looking at different things, and one of the case studies that I love to kind of cite is what impossible incites in people is this sense of permission. And this guy is a guy named Roger Bannister. And Roger Bannister in 1954 was the first human being in all of recorded history to ever break the 4-minute mile. All of recorded history is a big amount of time. We've been recording history for a couple years now, right? He breaks it on May 6th, I think, of 1954. Within 60 days, 2 more people broke that record. All of recorded history, nobody. He breaks it, 2 more people, including himself, breaks that record. So once impossible becomes possible, it's a sense of permission that's granted to everybody, and everybody goes and does it. And that's just, again, that's not rhetoric, that's statistics. That's factual data. So for us as human beings, when we look at things, and we look at things especially in things that are helping other human beings, maybe it's not possible now, maybe pure water is not possible now, maybe this, that, or the other. It's just a question of time, right? look at all the medical inventions that are coming out nowadays. You know, the guy that discovered the test for pancreatic cancer, he's a high school kid, right? He's a high school kid. So these things it's just a question of time, which I find incredibly motivating in terms of anything that we set our sights on. So Tempt is kind of act 1, or chapter 1, if you will, the non-impossible story. Chapter 2 happened on July 11th. Again, Venice Beach story. At a restaurant right over on Abercrombie. I was out to dinner with somebody, and we started talking about things, and we started talking about this guy. This guy's name is Dr. Tom Catena. And this guy I'm out to dinner with said, yeah, this guy's amazing. It's this doctor in Sudan in this area called the Nuba Mountains, and blah, blah, blah. We start talking, so I do what every self-respecting human being does. At the end of an interesting night, you go back and you look up online, right? And you Facebook him, right? So you go back and I go back and I look at this guy, and I read this story by Alex Perry, and it talks about this doctor. And this doctor is alone in the Nuba Mountains, and he is treating these people. And the Nuba Mountains is, everyone here, has everyone here been educated in the United States? Who hasn't been educated in the United States? Okay, so you guys probably know where Sudan is. For those of you who are educated in this country, you probably don't know. So Sudan is located in a country called Africa, or a continent called Africa. But it's a contested, Nuba Mountains is a contested area between Sudan and, which is kind of North Sudan and South Sudan. And it's one of the most recent countries. It was actually, I think it was July 11th? Yeah, July 11th in 2011, I think is when they received independence. So there's this war going on between North Sudan or Sudan and South Sudan. They declare independence, and the Nuba Mountains gets the raw end of the deal, because when they draw the lines, Nuba Mountains have been fighting on the side of the South, but when they're in the negotiation table, they said, well, let's just move that line this way. And Sudan got screwed. Or I'm sorry, the Nuba Mountains got screwed. They got put in essentially the camp or the country that they had been fighting. So the government of Sudan, I promise this isn't a political, this isn't a Michael Moore talk, I promise. But so the government of Sudan then implemented a classic military approach, which is you bomb, burn, and pillage, you drive everybody out, and then when your ground forces come in, no one's there, and you go, oh, and you plant your flag and say, looks like there's no one here to fight. So they've been constantly bombing this area. Well, this doctor named Dr. Tom is treating all of the people. He's the only doctor within a 1,500-mile radius. And he's treating all these people. And he does literally everything, from drawing blood to appendectomies to crazy complicated surgeries to really simple surgeries and delivering babies. And he's this incredible guy. Well, when the war broke out, his bosses basically said, hey, you got to get out. It's gnarly over there. And he said, I'm a missionary doctor. This is what I do. I don't run when it gets tough. That's when I stay. And so he stayed. And so I'm like, wow, this is incredible to learn about him. Well, the gnarly part about it is that the way that this war works is that the government, in that military tactic of driving people out, they just constantly do these bombing missions. And they roll 55-gallon drums filled of jet fuel and shrapnel, metal shrapnel, out of the back of prop planes. So you want to talk about precision bombing? This is the antithesis of that. They roll these things out. Well, when they hit the ground, they spray shrapnel everywhere. So the good thing, if there is such a thing as a good thing about a bomb, is that if you're below ground, if you get into a foxhole and there's foxholes everywhere, you're good. Because as long as you're not in the line, in the path of the shrapnel, then you're okay. And the dust settles and people come up. And the people are so resilient, they actually grab parts of the shrapnel and use them for farming tools. That's kind of how resilient the Nubans are. So part of this story that I read in Time was this young boy named Daniel was out tending his family's herd. And he heard the bomb come. And he looked around and there wasn't a foxhole. So he hid behind a tree. And he wrapped his arms around a tree like this. And the bomb went off not far from where he was. And the tree protected his body, but it blew off his arms. So this is at 11 o'clock at night. This is the image. I come back from dinner, and I'm reading this, and I'm learning this, and this is the image that I see. And I'm just kind of sitting there, a bit aghast, a bit shocked. I wasn't really expecting this. And where I'm sitting at my kitchen table, I'm looking down the hallway where these three knuckleheads sleep. And the thing in the article, at the very end of the article, Daniel said when he woke up, Dr. Tom saved him. He stitched him up. And when Dr. Tom saved him, when Daniel woke up, he said, he realized he was an armless boy. He said, if I could die, I would have, because now I'm going to be such a burden to my family. And I don't know how many people here are parents in here, or have nieces and nephews, or just like kids. But the concept of a kid wishing that they could die because they're going to be a burden to an adult, for me, was just like, oh. And especially, I couldn't imagine these guys saying that. So my process kicked in. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do it, but I got to do something. So in my research around Non-Impossible, I had launched Non-Impossible Labs. And Non-Impossible Labs, we started to celebrate other people who we thought were just doing crazy stuff, who were inventing things or doing things or hacking things. And we had just done a story on a guy who had 3D printed a hand out in Africa. And we're like, okay, good, there's something. We got something here. So again, surround yourself with people that make you feel stupid. I invited a bunch of people to my house. We moved all of our stuff out. We moved out into the back again, like we did for the iWriter. We started cooking lots of carbohydrates for everybody all weekend long, and we started to hack, and we went through and we started to 3D print things and started to play with different types of prosthetics, and we invited owners of 3D printing companies and started to look at, well, do we use plastic or do we use wood? And this is the carpenter from South Africa who first made the RoboHand, the hand that we did a report on, and so I knew that something out there had been done in this space. And the end of our hacker weekend, it was an utter and absolute failure. We didn't do anything right. One of the people that we invited over to do a test arm for, she was missing a right arm, and we had made a left arm for her. It was just a parade of horribles all weekend long. But we learned what didn't work. That's for sure. So Richard said, "Listen, mate, I see that look in your eye. I know that you're not going." And I said, "The tickets are bought. I'm going, no matter what. It's just a question of whether I'm going to go out there and actually get anything done." And he said, "Look, reroute your trip through South Africa." So I went through South Africa and stayed with Richard for about 7 days, and we just printed all day, all night, played with it. I made more wrong hands and arms than you can imagine, but I started to get the hang of it. And he showed me kind of the ergonomics of the hands, how it worked, and then I bid his family farewell, hopped on a plane, and flew from Johannesburg to Nairobi, and then from Nairobi to this runway. And this runway is in Yida. And Yida is a refugee camp that's very close to the border of the Nuba Mountains and South Sudan. And this is where all the Nubans flee to. And then I got a chance to meet Daniel, the young boy. The plan was to go over, after meeting him, we land, I go meet him, and I was incredibly nervous. It was about meeting this kid. This entire project was called Project Daniel. This is everything we've been working towards, everything we've been trying to do. Go meet him, talk to him for a little bit, and then hop in a truck and drive about 8-9 hours illegally across the border with the SPLA, which is the Sudanese People's Liberation Army, their kind of guidance and help to kind of get across the border under the cover of night, and to Dr. Tom, who's on the other side, who's actually in the Sudan region. So we went over and we met and we talked to him for a little bit. There was a problem though. When we packed up all the trucks to get ready, the security showed up and said, "Listen, we're from SPLA, and you can't go." And we said, "What do you mean we can't go?" And they said, "We're sorry, but the ceasefire ended. So it's an active war zone out there right now, and we just don't feel comfortable with you going." And I did what every self-respecting producer in Los Angeles would do, which is, maybe you don't understand. I'm on a schedule. We got, I brought some guys with cameras, some printers, and some laptops, and we're going to go up there and we're going to do this. So if you can just, and he's like, "Maybe you don't understand. There's bombs and bullets going on out there, and you're not going anywhere." So we spent about an hour freaking out. Like, this whole mission had kind of crashed to a close. Our whole thing was to get to Dr. Tom and help Dr. Tom come up with a methodology that he could start to do this for other people. So we're like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And luckily, one of the local nonprofits in the area, the NGOs, said, "Hey, look, while you guys get this stuff sorted out, we've got a shed in the back. If you want to work over in our shed, then you can get going." And we said, "Great, let's do it." So we said, "Look, Let's start doing this now. We'll start teaching people here now, and let's at least get an arm for Daniel. So we went over and we started setting up this shed, AKA an oven, because it was 100 and something degrees out. And we just started working with the cast and the forms of what we were doing, and getting to know Daniel a little bit. When I first met him, he was pretty much silent, didn't want to talk, and starting to get to know him a little bit and kind of who he was. And we learned the saying TIA, which is "This is Africa," which is the equivalent of Murphy's Law. Literally, if it could go wrong, it did. The electricity was wrong. The electricity spiked. It was so hot. Everyone here is, I'm assuming at Google, everyone here is fairly familiar with how a 3D printer works, right? Tube of cold plastic goes through extruder that heats it up to hot plastic, turns plastic to hot frosting, grid, repeat. Problem: if cold plastic is so hot that cold plastic melts to itself before it gets to extruder, cold plastic can't go through piece to make cold plastic hot plastic, and it all melts to itself. So it was so hot there that my filament was melting to itself, and it was just fouling up every print that we were doing. So we had to start printing at night. That started to work a little bit, but then we had problems with that because most of these printers give off light. Light attracts what? Bugs. Bugs in Africa are a little bigger than bugs in Venice Beach. So I had these dive-bombing pterodactyl-sized moths hitting my printer and jamming up my printer so that I couldn't actually print. So it was like one thing after another. But it's called Project Daniel, and this is what I woke up to every day, was Daniel sitting next to me. So everybody repeat after me. Imagine Daniel sitting next to you and try saying, "Sorry, Daniel, we're not going to be able to do this for you." Yeah, you can't say it. It's impossible, right? I don't believe in impossible. That I believe is impossible. So we just kind of kept fighting through it. And then after kind of all kinds of trials and tribulations and mess ups, this is what happened.
There's this thing in me that loves to see things that are not supposed to be done, be done.
Daniel is just one of 50,000 amputees left in the wake of the bloodiest war Africa has ever known. We flew into an active war zone in Sudan with 3D printers, laptops, spools of plastic, and the goal to build Daniel an arm. You ready? The concept of Project Daniel was hatched on July 11th. And on November 11th, Daniel fed himself for the first time in 2 years. But it's never about just one person. If we could teach the locals to do it themselves, then Project Daniel could live on long after we left. And it did. So that's Project Daniel, and that's what happened, which is, take the first time temp drawing on that kind of night down in downtown Los Angeles, and then take the moment where Daniel fed himself for the first time, and then that moment in the room where he's actually throwing stuff to Dr. Tom. It was a pretty awesome experience. So what I did around this was essentially a conclusion of, you could go about this a couple different ways, right? You could go about this acting like a nonprofit, or you could go about this and actually get corporations and companies to get something out of the process of changing the world. So my philosophy around this now, and what I do, is I believe that brands can change the world. And I believe that brands can change the world because human beings run those brands. Human beings run those corporations. And I started off as a nonprofit, and I used to joke with my friends that I was getting carpal tunnel from like shaking the tin can all the time, trying to get people to throw a couple shekels in. And I wasn't really getting anywhere. And I spent most of my time trying to like figure out how to get people to give me money as opposed to doing the work. And then I realized, well, what would happen if I actually started to think about this in a completely different way? And the different way is this, is like, and Fuller says it the best, is like, if you want to change something, don't go about it by just taking a new tact on things. You have to clear the slate and start it from a completely new approach. And that's what we did. And so what we started to do is say, well, what happens if we got brands who already, and especially this company, you guys understand this, people and brands have a message that they have to tell. And they tell it in a variety of different ways. Well, what would happen if we gave brands an incredible story that they could tell? And they could say, yes, we want to give you money to go tell this story, but this story is, instead of being a comedian telling a joke or a fictitious commercial that's being made or a contest or something like this, what if it was something that's really truly changing the world? That's something that brands can sink their teeth into. And that's something that the people of those brands can sink their teeth into. So that's what we did, is we got Intel and a company called Press Apart to get behind Project Daniel. And then we launched Project Daniel. We launched Project Daniel actually a week ago last week on January 6th. Ironically, the exact day that the book came out, which was nice serendipity. And it launched, and we got 420 million earned media impressions in 14 weeks with 0 paid media. It was purely from just people being amazed by the story and really seeing the story as a valuable thing. And everybody in the world covered it. That's the value that Intel got. That's the value that Press Apart got. And that's the value that the world got, because now the world got a piece of code, or they got a manuscript, or they got an Instructables, and they got a how-to video on how to actually make this thing. Because everything we do at Not Impossible, our theory is not IP. Our theory is not let's make something and let's go be the biggest 3D printing prosthetic makers of the world. It's like, no, give it away. Because the arm that we made and we launched a year ago, that arm has been bested probably 4 or 5 times over since then, because our job was to start to light the fuse and then let people run with it. When we made the iWriter, we lit the fuse, and the iWriter is almost obsolete at this point, because you can now get the devices that existed were 15 grand. We made it for 90 bucks. Now you can get beautiful devices for 200 bucks that are off the shelf, that come in a nice box and have customer support, and not some hacker over in Venice Beach that put some stuff together. So that's what we were trying to do. We're trying to incite and provoke this type of change. And that's what we were able to do around this. And we launched this thing, and then it accomplished everything that we wanted it to do as far as media goes. Ad of the day, and then it started winning awards, Tellys, and we got Best of Show at the One Show, and ASCP created a special award for us, and we won at the next awards for there. At Cannes, which is kind of the big advertising festival, we won the granddaddy of them all, which is the Titanium. And this was all about a story about us going out and doing good with technology. So what this concluded for us is, what it just proved to us is that our theory is, everyone's heard the theory doing good is good business. Everyone's aware of that. And everybody in this room most likely makes decisions on purchases based on whether they know a company is doing good. But doing good is also good branding. And if we can actually take what Not Impossible wants to do, is take all these different initiatives that we're doing right now and match them up with corporations who can get the word out. Because your company and other companies like your company, you have this massive, massive megaphone that nonprofits don't have access to. And at the end of the day, I'm judging us by whether or not we're doing good in the world. And whether we do good in the world is measured by how powerfully our message gets out there. And I absolutely believe in the power of the story. The story that we told was about one. This is a critical point to this as well. Well, usually I say there's probably nobody in this room with the net worth of Bill Gates, but I'm at this company, so I can't make that assumption, right? Maybe somebody of you have been here a long time. But most people don't have Buffett or Gates type net worth. So you can't attack things like hunger or malaria or things like that. As noble and as amazing as those are, how do you wrap your arms around the concept of malaria as a single human being? Or hunger? How do you wrap your arms around that? But if I said, there's a dude outside that needs a sandwich, can you loan me $5 or heck, just run and pilfer one from the Google cafeteria? Can you hook me up? You want to do that? The answer is yes. If I say, hey, can you really quickly, I need to solve world hunger. You want to help me out? You're like, So the powerful thing is the power of one story about one person is what we base our philosophy on. Our philosophy is help one, help many. You help one person, but by helping that one person, it has the potential to help many, many people. And that's through the power of story. So we go through and we tell stories about this all the time on Not Impossible now. We're constantly telling stories about things. We just were at CES having our minds blown about all these incredible people who are out there doing incredible things around technology. But we're not so interested in the 70 million inch curved plasma as we are in these different devices. We're like, interesting. What if we took that and matched it up with that and then matched that with that and then we Frankenstein something that can actually accomplish something amazing. So the question that we ask to you guys, and the question that I ask to my readers, and the question that I ask to the people who are familiar with Not Impossible is, what's your story? What's your story, and even more importantly, who is your one? Who is that one person? What's that one invention? What's that one thing that you can do that can lead to something that can help many, many people around the world? And ultimately, that's who is your Daniel. So help one, help many. Thank you guys very much. Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, so I have a couple of technical questions, actually.
Uh-oh, I'm not the tech guy. I'm going to preface that right now.
Okay, but on the eye writer, I'm just wondering, when you're drawing something by flicking your eyes around as the brush, and then you want to look at what you've drawn, how do you avoid scratching over?
It's a great question. So there's two ways to engage ocular recognition technology. And I never said those three words in a row prior to the eye writer, ocular recognition technology. Blink and gaze. So the way that the eye writer worked is that you would, Temp was laying there and he would stare and he would blink and that puts the pencil down, and he would blink and that would pick the pencil up. So you would just blink and pick it up and then move to what you want to do and figure out where you want to go again and blink and set it down again. Okay, and his skills as an artist, I can barely draw a stick figure. What he was able to do with his eyes in essentially a two-dimensional application with a pencil and a paper, essentially what it was. What he was able to create three-dimensionally was, there's actually some pictures of it in the book. You can see it. It's remarkable.
Very cool. The other one was just how is, when Daniel was throwing the ball, how is that?
All right, this is awesome. Okay, everybody put your hand out in front of you like this. Okay, now on the tip of your fingers, you've got guitar strings. Really, those are tight guitar strings, right? And it runs down your hand, around your wrist, around to the fulcrum point of your elbow and to your bicep. Okay? Now go like this. What happens to those guitar strings? They what? They get tighter. They get tighter. And what happens if they get tighter? What happens to your fingers if these are hinged? They have to. If they don't, if this is all fixed and you go like this, you're not going to be able to bend it. So something has to give. So you go like this, it pulls on the strings and your hand collapses. So the concept of throwing something, I'm looking for something to throw. Here, ready? So I'm going to pick this up. I put my hand across like this. I put my hand over it. It took Daniel all of maybe 13 seconds to figure this out too. It was incredible. You put your hand over it. You bend your arm like this. It goes like this. Now watch this. I'm going to throw this. Watch my arm. Okay, so it's bent. It's collapsed. It's the strings are pulled. Ready? This is a picture. Arms bent, arms bent, arms bent, arms bent, arms bent, arms bent, arms straight with my fingers open. So he drilled 3 perfect passes to us with that ball of ace bandage, and we were like, what the hell is going on? Is this kid like a test tube quarterback that we've discovered him? It's like Manute Bull discovering him in some foreign land and bring him back? And that's just the natural physiology of a throw. It's like this, then you release, and so his fingers opened up. So he threw it to Dr. Tom and me a couple times, and it was like perfect throws.
So the power then actually came from his shoulders. It wasn't, the arm itself was not powered?
the arm is not powered at all. It's completely manual. It's strings. There's nothing. I mean, we looked at different ways that we might be able to create things with power. And you put something in a village where there's no power, no electricity, and you've got a feeble machine that's going to last as long as a bunch of them, a bunch of first world countryites are there, and as soon as they leave, it's going to bust. So the way we did it is we tried to make it so that, oh, a string breaks, great, restring it. Oh, finger breaks, great, reprint it. And we try to make it as simple as possible.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Probably loud enough anyway. Thanks for coming, first off.
Sure.
I just wanted to ask a question. What are you up to next? Like, what's the thing that's keeping you up at night now because of what you're doing?
No one ever asked that question before. It's almost like I have slides prepared for that. She's not a plant. She's not a. Did you know me before this? No. That wasn't a planted question, but it gets asked. Yes, I do. Because everyone it's kind of a little game I play in my head of like, okay, is it gonna be the first question or the third question? Usually so I got taken a while ago, right after Project Daniel launched in April of last year, and I got taken to a hospital or a rehabilitation hospital in Mexico City, and they took me and there's this incredible pediatric rehabilitation center. And they took me, at the end of my tour, they showed me this room. And this room was kind of all their gadgets and whatnot. And this was a little girl named Pia, and she's on a treadmill, hanging from straps, and she's got these little kind of like, elliptical kind of robots on her, the side of her legs. And what this is she's got cerebral palsy. And when you have cerebral palsy, in my very unmedical definition of cerebral palsy, it's the bridge between the brain and the muscles isn't firing. So the act of me saying I'm going to walk, I just told my legs to do that, and I do it naturally, right? But there's no firing there. It's not firing down to tell her legs what to do. So what this does is it kind of reverses the signal, and it starts to show her brain the other way, like, hey, this is what it feels like to walk. So like a DJ, you kind of crossfade it down, and over the period of a year, she starts to learn what it means to be ambulatory. And it's awesome. And the human body is just, just an incredible thing. So I'm watching this thing, and I'm like, this is amazing. And we went out to lunch out. The guy that ran this hospital, who's this incredible human being, we went out afterwards, and I said, man, this is amazing. I love that last thing that you just showed me. But my question is, with as many kids as you see, and I got there at about noon for my tour, and they had already seen by noon 1,200 kids in this facility. So I said, with as many kids as you see, why don't you have just rows of these things and just like literally just pumping people through these things? Because if you use this, they said that the kid can walk in a year, and if they don't, it could take them 5 years, if even, and with the kind of the classic parallel bar, and with a physical therapist right down, like working with them. It's very kind of one-on-one. He says, I'd love to have that, but they're $500,000 each. And so who are the technical people here? Who's on the programming side? Okay. You guys know the MasterCard Priceless campaign? Treadmill, $200. Climbing straps, $40, brand new at REI. You guys want to try to take a shot at how hard it would be to just create something to go like this? Like try as hard as you might to try to get that price up, and I couldn't get it up. So I said to him, remember the whole commit and figure it out? I had a voice in my head that was like, be careful. You didn't know jack about ocular recognition and 3D printing, but this one might be a little bigger. And I ignored the voice, and I said, all right, how about this? Let's say I can make this thing for you for under $100,000. And he said, I'd buy 20 of them from you. And I went, all right, I'll be right back. And this week is a huge week because we're finalizing some of the partnerships around this. But we are going to create a low-cost ambulatory exoskeleton called, all of our initiatives are called What They Do and Not Impossible. So this is called Walk, Not Impossible. And we're going to create this thing so that we can do exactly what we did with the iWriter, exactly what we did with Project Daniel. And our goal is to get, within 3 years, over 1,000 kids walking again for the first time. And the coolest thing about it is that in the room that I built of all the people that made me feel stupid, one of my friends said, hey, if you ever do this again, my son is a programmer, can he come and he'll go get you guys waters and things like that? And we said, sure, yeah, come on over. His name's Joel. I was at his, when he was born, I've known him his whole life. And so he kind of sat quietly in the room, and at the end of all of these really smart people with lots of initials behind their name talking, he raised his hand and said, hey, do you mind if I share something? I've got a couple ideas. And we went, sure, Joel, go ahead. Go ahead. And he just dropped knowledge on us for about 3 minutes straight. And it was just the sound of everyone's jaws just going, ooh, 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 as he dropped it. And I'm proud to tell you that the Granada Hills High School robotics team are the lead manufacturers and hackers on this assignment. And they are blowing people's minds right now. It's just incredible. So we actually, Wednesday, we are going to be filming our prototype going live for the first time. We hope to be in alpha. That'll be the prototype. We hope to be, and the one thing is I didn't tell the guy when I went to lunch with him that I'd be done by December, but that was kind of in my own head, so I'm pissed off that I missed my deadline by about 3 weeks to have this thing done. But we'll have our prototype this week. We'll hopefully have alpha within 30 to 45 days. We'll go into beta with Cornell Medical back east with a thing called Burke Rehabilitation Hospital. They're looking at partnering with us just in some of our trials. One of our amazing allies and volunteers works back there. And then we're going to try to blow this thing out to the world. So that's the next thing we're working on right now. We launch this week or next week another iteration of a communication device for people who have trapped-in syndrome. And it came actually through introduction through a bunch of Googlers, actually, up in the San Francisco office. I met a guy named Alan Yu, and Alan heard me talk at the Exploratorium in San Francisco and came up afterwards and said, we have this thing called you guys do 20%, right? He's like, we have this thing called 20%. I don't know what I can do around with my 20%, but I want to try to help you. And so he just started doing what his kind of gift is and what his blessing is he started making introductions to people, and he introduced us to some people, and now HP kind of came on board to kind of help us with this thing. And we're launching this thing called Don's Voice. And Don's Voice, Don's been married to Lorraine now for 25 years, and he hasn't spoken to her for 15 because he had ALS. And he's a farmer, and he lives a very simple life in northern kind of, outside 2 hours outside of Canada. And we basically recreated his letterboard, the letterboard that Tempt was using. So this is where I was just like, what? It's 2013, and Don was still using a letterboard. And I'm like, you're kidding me. So we actually, it sounds very simple, but the pragmatism around it is very kind of, I think, is what makes it so brilliant. If I gave all of you guys a new phone or a new keyboard for your computers and said, here you go, but I changed the order of it, how would that be like the most frustrating thing in the world for you?
Yes.
Well, if you have a letterboard that you've been using your whole life, your whole kind of paralyzed life, and it's laid out the way that your loved one or caretaker laid it out, that's what you're used to, right? That's the way, that's your keyboard, that's your interface. So we basically created a way, an ocular recognition tool that lets you customize your interface so that it mimics your letterboard, so that when you transition from the paper route to the digital route, it's a very fluid transition. And that allowed him to write a love letter to his wife for the first time in 15 years, which was a really awesome story. So those are two projects that we're super passionate about. And that'll launch either this week or next week. So take a look for it. Yeah.
Good question. Are you getting any backlash from the original makers of those expensive, like the Walker and the...
Not yet. Not yet, but we give it away. How do you... Yeah. This is going to be broadcast, so I'm not going to talk too much smack, but our mantra is to give it away.
Yeah.
If it was to harness the IP and try to make a profit, then I believe in original idea, and I believe that that people, if they come up with something great, then they should be able to make money doing it and build a company around it. And I don't believe that people's communication and mobility should be hinged by whether or not they have money or insurance. So we do it, and then we put it out there to the world, and if people take it and make it better, which they've done on everything we've done so far, then great. That's what we want to see happen.
Yeah, so that leaves the question, what is your business model then? Because I know a lot of other companies are trying to get into the good space, like do good, yet their business model isn't set up to enable that, where Google has 20%. How does Mick keep the lights on for his family?
It's a great question. HP is going to pay somebody for content. Now the content that they get is an amazing story around Don and Lorraine Moore. Intel is going to pay somebody for their content. They get a story about a young boy feeding himself for the first time in 2 years. The Robot Walker is going to be an incredible story, as you can imagine, with all of the different stories that come out of that, where kids becoming ambulatory. We are a storytelling company. That's what we do. But rather than Funny or Die, where it's about comedy, or Michael Bay about exploding things, our stories are focused around technology for the sake of humanity, and that's kind of how we do it. And then we have different kind of offshoots, and the business model is such that Not Impossible Now is an ad-supported site, so you can go and you can, just like you would go to, I don't know, CNET or Vice or Tech Republic or GIZMODO or things like that, and just see those things. Now you're seeing stories that are kind of focused on that technology for the sake of humanity. So we're growing. We're growing that side of the business as well, but right now our primary is through brands seeing what we're doing and going, that's amazing, how can we get part of that story? Yeah.
What does your wife think about you going to a war zone?
So my wife is co-directing the documentary. She's an incredible storyteller, and we both put blinders on a little bit, and we're about to release the cut. We're about in our final cut. And now that she saw how gnarly it was over there, and she's seen all the footage, there's like we've had conversations about the fact that it probably wasn't the something that would have been as encouraged. But it's also she's incredible, and she would have never said no, and I would have never said no, because when you're called to do something like that, and you just feel that you get that gut reaction. And we see incredible things come across our desk every single day. I get voicemails and emails and Facebook messages all the time, and we always are trying to encourage people to do it. But when you get hit in the gut by something and you know you have to do it, there's nothing religious about it at all. It's just like, okay, you need to do it. And that was kind of the thing with Project Daniel.
Thank you so much.